none of us, Ya Rasulullah, definitely none of us, we prefer our own property over the property of our heirs. He said, then your property is what you eat and consume, what you wear and tear, and what you give for charity and keep for yourself with God. But the property of your heirs, what you leave behind. So why should you leave behind? Then enjoy it, eat, and wear and live comfortably. That's what the Prophet ﷺ advised, and you really don't need to leave anything to your heirs. Now, especially when your heirs are grown up, like my case, for instance, definitely, why should I leave any property to my children? They are all grown up, they have their own families, they have their own income, they have their own properties. So why should I worry anymore? I have worried about them for 50 years, and that's plenty of worry. I don't need to worry for more than that. So it is the advice of the Prophet. Use your own property, don't leave it to your heirs. The idea is a preference between consumption and investment is a temporary preference, or call it a temporal rather preference, depending on the situation in the economy you live in. If you live in an economy that is developing and growing with high level of poverty, then you may focus on investment more. But if you live in an economy that is not like that, you may have to focus more on consumption. So why we prefer investment over consumption? There is no Sharia reason. There may be circumstantial reasons, and these circumstantial reasons are determined by two kinds of bodies, either by the society in its totality, along with its government, with its representations, and they decide that we want to focus on investment for some important reason, or by the individual, where each individual will create his own priorities on his own self. And then, as I mentioned a moment ago, definitely my priority now is not to leave any property, is not investment, is rather consumption, and following the advice of the Prophet ﷺ, that my property is what I consume myself, and the property of my heir is what I leave behind. Why should I leave anything behind? I don't need really to leave anything behind. So it is an individual decision or a society decision. And then, of course, when it is a society decision, individual units in that society must follow the collective decision, must abide by that collective decision. So calling on Islamic banks that you should prefer investment financing over consumer financing is calling on the wrong party to take an action that doesn't belong to them. This action, if it is collective, belongs to the whole society and its government, and then everybody should abide by that, or it is individual, then as a financial institution that aims at making profit, it seeks where the profit is higher. It doesn't seek what is investment or consumption finance. It shouldn't make any difference. Islamic finance to consumers is, or to business, is developmental. Let's remember that. Even when you finance consumption, you give the signal market to the producers to produce more. So it is developmental. We don't claim, and we shouldn't really claim, that's a communist claim, used to be anyway in the past, that consumer goods are not productive. They are only consumed. They are bought, and by being bought, they give the signal to the market to produce more. So Islamic finance, by its sticking to financing real economy only, is developmental. Conventional finance does not stick to financing real economy. Let's remember and let's know it, and I'm sure one of our students should maybe prove it in the statistically. Most of the financing of conventional banks is interbanks financing and debt financing, debt-based, that is rescheduling of debts. That doesn't exist at all in Islamic finance. There is no rescheduling of debts, and we only finance goods and services that always, with each bit of finance in the Islamic finance, we give a market signal to producers to produce more. So there is a big difference. Don't think of our institutions in the same terms you think of the conventional banks, because the composite of their activities are quite different. Islamic finance, by its nature, returns and keep financial and human resources in the productive real sector. All these resources that are used in the fiction and in the many transactions, interest-based transactions and debt-based transactions, all these transactions, by eliminating them, resources that are used in them are definitely have no place to do other than the real economy, other than the real market. So what do they do other than that? They will produce goods and services, and then this is, in my opinion, the best way to really, if you want to eliminate poverty in the world, we have to implement Islamic finance everywhere in the world, so that no resources would be ever used, financial resources or human resources, would ever be used in the fictitious markets. And the fictitious markets are not small. One market alone takes at least 11 times the amount of the global GDP. One item alone, take options alone, and the options are simply, and as simple as that, they don't exist in the Islamic finance. They don't exist in the Islamic economics at all. So when we apply Islamic finance, there will be no options at all, meaning the $1,200 trillion used in options have no other place to do and to make profit other than the real market. There is nothing, there is no opportunity to make profit other than the real market. Would there be any remaining poverty if we increase the productive capacity by all these trillions of dollars? Imagine it. Islamic finance, we reject, of course, in Islamic economics, extravagance and wasteful use of resources, but the Islamic economic system does not impose a preference of investment over consumption over any individual. As a system, there is no preference. If there are circumstantial situations that create a collective decision to prefer one aspect over another, then economic units, individuals and banks and other institutions should abide by this collective decision. Rather, it recognizes that the objective of production and ownership is final consumption. Final consumption is, of course, as the Prophet mentioned, is the objective of ownership and also the objective of production. and it encourages enjoying it. The Islamic economic system encourages enjoying final consumption using your own property and using your own means. And that hadith which I mentioned already. Islamic finance and its Islamic financial institutions do not support harmful things. By not supporting harmful things, aren't we saving the society from the expenditures that are spent to deal with these harms, to treat these harms, and to say, for instance, the accidents that happens in America because of alcoholic or because of drinking, driving. The cost of these, the cost of repairing them, the cost of treating these hurts, these damages, whether in bodies or in properties, how much is it? All this we are saving this. Isn't that developmental? Is it not developmental itself when we do not finance harmful things? We finance means we restrict financing only to useful things, things that benefit the human being. So this is developmental itself. We shouldn't really shy from saying it in a clear way. Individuals by their fitrah are the ones who have always personal inner incentives to create value, to add to their own wealth. They like to become richer and have more. That is described in the Quran and everywhere. We know that, and every economist also know that. These incentives create wealth. These incentives create development and growth. And the Islamic economic system encourages them to increase the welfare of the society. Governments are responsible for setting macroeconomic policies. Individual economic units should abide by that, including Islamic financial institutions and so on. It is neither rational nor fair nor appropriate to charge bankers and finance providers with the task of deciding between investment and consumption, or between consumption today and consumption tomorrow. This is a job or a function of individuals and government. Bankers' job is to make profit for their depositors and shareholders by facilitating the job of individuals and government. Bankers are not the ones who determine, who take the decision of preferring consumption over investment or investment over consumption. The moral dimension of Islamic finance, again, there are many writings that say the moral dimension of Islamic finance is doubtful, and you guys are not contributing to the moral values in the society and the economy. I definitely bring the attention to the points that are very important in this regard. Islamic finance is moral by the fact that it is derived from Sharia. And definitely our Sharia is the most moral conduct system that ever existed in the world. There is no other system for conduct, for human behavior that is more moral than our Sharia. And Islamic finance is derived from it. There is no sense to any claim that Islamic finance does not emphasize positive moral contributions to society, or positive morality, only negative morality, because many people talk about don't make riba, don't make gharar. Unfortunately, yes, very often, more people, my son the other day, my son, by the way, and he has PhD in Sharia, so he was objecting to a statement that we all used to say, that when we eat, Bismillah, Allahumma waqina adab al-nar. He said, what is the relation of taking food to qina adab al-nar? Leave qina adab al-nar to another setting. Not when you eat. When you eat, say, Allahumma barik lana fima razaqtana. وَجَعَلْنَا نَتَمَتَّعْ بِهَذَا الطَّعَامِ. God, give us blessing of this food and make us enjoy this food. Why do you mention? And make us avoid the hellfire. Pray against the hellfire in another setting. Not in the setting when you want to eat. When you want to eat and you want this food to be blessed to you. You don't want, it has nothing to do with make us avoid the hellfire. So that doesn't mean we don't pray to make us avoid the hellfire, but be positive here. You don't need to bring the negative aspect everywhere you go. So unfortunately, many of us, the writers on Islamic finance, they emphasize always the conditions in Islamic finance. There should be no riba and no gharar. You have to avoid riba and avoid gharar and avoid other prohibited sales. Well, for God's sake, the positive parts of it is a lot more important. Don't we produce good? Don't we, in Islamic finance, help producing goods that are useful to human beings? And we prevent goods that are bad, focusing on producing goods that are useful to human beings. Isn't that a moral value itself? Isn't that a good contribution itself? So don't focus on the negative things, please. Okay? And of course, we know that most beloved among you, as the Prophet ﷺ told us, are those who are most beneficial to God's creatures. And to all creatures, in fact. Earning by owning is a very essential and fundamental ethical principle. It provides economic justice. Isn't that just that if you want to earn, you have to own something that can create increment? Of course, we are talking about finance here, not earning by your own job. I earn salary by teaching here in this university, not by this lecture, but by teaching it. But that is earning by job, by labor. But when we talk about finance, definitely finance earns by property, not by labor. So the prohibition of interest and other unjust practices also is a major achievement of Islamic finance today. Islamic financial institutions today have been able to show to the world that it is possible to create financial institutions without riba, and that riba is not the indispensable curse that we all have to be subject to. There were writers in the past. The latest writing of this kind was by one of the experts of the Central Bank of Saudi Arabia, which was written in the 1989 or 88. But before that, there were writing by many others that interest and the banking system that is based on interest is an indispensable curse. It is bad, but we cannot live without it. Many writers, Islamic writers, used to say that, including that one. I remember when that was published in a Saudi newspaper, the president of the Islamic Development Bank called on me and asked me, well, Monzer, can you write an answer to that? Can you make a reply? I want to publish a reply in my name, in his name. I told him I can, yes. And I did that, alhamdulillah, and it was published and it was sent also to Sama, president, that a reply to that article. Definitely, the fact that we proved to the world that finance can be done without committing any of these criminal, morally criminal issues of charging interest or making any deceptive contracts and so on. Without them, yes, finance can be provided in a moral way without these practices. The next one is Islamic finance strongly and tightly embraces the principle of economic justice in all its transactions. And of course, what we do with non-permissible income is a sign always. All Islamic banks today, because they deal in a complex society and complex economy, and because they deal and they have to deal with conventional banks, sometimes may either make mistakes in their contract, and then to correct these mistakes, they take the earning to the non-permissible account, non-permissible income account, or because of the transactions with the conventional banks, and the advice is that these conventional banks better reduce whatever resources that are available to them. So take from them as much as you can within the law, of course. And if we have to deposit with them large sums of money, we would take the interest and give it to charity rather than give it to them to use it to make more interest-based transactions. So the non-permissible income account exists in all Islamic financial institutions, and it is definitely a proof that they commit themselves to the principle of justice. And any unjust thing that happens to be in their hands, they do not use it for their own selves. Rather, they give it to charity. Of course, we don't give it to the one who paid it. We don't give interest back to the one who paid it, because that person will make a fool out of us, and we will be betraying our objective by increasing its resources. Rather, we give it to charity, but we don't gain it, we don't earn it. Avoidance of harmful things and adopting scientific, not theological, and I insist on this point. Our criteria of what is moral and what is not moral is not theological, is not religious, is not based on doctrine. It is based on what is harmful and what is not harmful. And the Quran clearly said that. And we know that on that basis we do not finance things that did not come in the Quran, yet science proved that they are harmful, so we avoid them, we avoid financing them. The next point is Islamic financial institutions and Islamic banks are mere agents, and they require authorization and disclosure for any less than profit maximization activity. I gave them the money as a depositor to make profit for me. So any action that is less than profit maximization requires a permit from me, because they are only agent. In Mudaraba, you know, the Mudarib is only an agent. So agency contract does not allow Islamic financial institutions to give donations, not anything beyond the normal. And Sharia advisement need to observe social and environmental responsibility. The last point, I'm sorry, probably I am taking too much time of yours, but the last point, we can make it quickly, the contribution to society. Being a property-based Islamic finance support the production and exchange of goods and services that benefit societies and humanities. This is an important point that we must emphasize it all the time. All our activities in Islamic finance, definitely all our activity, and exclusively, there is none of the Islamic finance that goes beyond that. All our activities in Islamic finance go to produce, to support the production and exchange of goods and services, of course, that are beneficial to humanity. We do not do anything other than that. That's the job. Does that job fulfill the objectives of Sharia, or are we away from the objectives of Sharia? I mean, any claim of not fulfilling the objectives of Sharia by supporting the production of goods and services that are of benefit to humanities, definitely this is within the objective of Sharia. By rejecting to finance any bad things and actions, Islamic finance embraces social welfare. Again, on the positive and the negative side, both of them are contributions to society. The fact that Islamic finance eliminates interest and other harmful practices, including practices that do not generate any income but waste resources, of course, all the energy, at least even the human energy that is put in them is not justified. Things that are gambling type of activities that only transfer wealth from one person to another without adding wealth at all. The fact that Islamic finance eliminates interest and other harmful practices such as zero-sum transactions, Islamic finance make a substantial contribution to justice and against economic exclusiveness in the society. The social responsibility is an important issue and applies to all members of society, whether legal or natural persons, banks, all banks, Islamic or conventional banks are included. I find several writings that talk Islamic banks do this and that and the other of being not good to the society, which what is claimed is wrong on one hand, but again, why don't you talk about conventional banks? What do they do of harms to the society? Why are you targeting Islamic banks and not targeting all banks, and all wrongdoing or wrongdoers in the society? Why pinpointing the Islamic banks alone? All persons, legal and natural, are expected to consider the externalities of their actions. And if an Islamic bank does not consider the externality of its action, then definitely that Islamic bank is wrong. And we should advise it not to do that. But that doesn't mean we do not, that we incriminate these banks without incriminating similar wrongdoers in the economy. Respect of human rights and rejection of discrimination against women, youth, elderly, color, or anything are expected from and should be forced on all social unit, all societies unit, whether they are Islamic or not. And those Islamic